love, justice, respect, equality, kindness, compassion, equal in dignity, and rights. Hello and welcome to Equal in Dignity and Rights by the Wasmuth Center for Human Rights, home of the Idaho Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. Today, you'll be introduced to another person of influence whose words are also etched into the stone of the Idaho Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. At the end of this video, we'll prompt you with a few questions that will get you started in today's virtual journal entry. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer to what you write. You are human, equal in dignity and rights. The odds are that you already know about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This minister and civil rights leader is one of the most well-known figures in recent history. In honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we will refresh your memory on details of his life. Of course, you may already know many of these facts, but a refresher never hurts. Martin Luther King Jr. was born January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, the United States. He was actually born with the name Michael King, but his father, also Michael King, changed both of their names to Martin Luther when he was 5 years old. His father, a minister, changed his name and his son's name to Martin Luther after a trip with the Baptist Alliance to visit Germany, in which he witnessed the rise and hatred of the Nazi regime. It is believed that upon that trip, Martin Luther King Sr. was inspired by the story of the historical theologian Martin Luther, who led the protest against the corruption of the Catholic Church in the 1500s. And so he adopted the name Martin Luther and came back to America, resolved to live a life free of the corruption of racism and anti-Semitism. King grew up in a middle-class black family. As a child, King Jr. became aware of racism when his white best friend was prevented from playing with him by the friend's parents because of race. That experience, combined with the segregation in schools, restaurants, and on public transportation, brought many questions to young Martin's mind regarding humanity. Martin Luther King Jr. was raised at a time in which some of the remnants of racism and the genocide of more than 60 million black people due to slavery in the United States had transformed into rampant extreme acts of violence and devastating social inequalities less than 100 years after slavery had ended. The deaths, segregation, inequalities, and discrimination perpetrated by white terrorists throughout the South and some racist citizens caused Martin Luther King Jr. to embark upon a life mission to resolve the inhumanity his generation faced.
I have a dream that one day.
So he started by going to college at the early age of 15 and earned his PhD in theology by age 25. Upon being elected as the leader of the Southern Leadership Conference, throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, King Jr. began organizing peaceful protests, writing, preaching, giving lectures, and pressuring politicians to change laws to end segregation and discrimination based on race, sex, religion, national origin, and eventually sexual orientation. His efforts, combined with a coalition of Americans who pushed for social progress, led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 during the President Lyndon B. Johnson administration. His work also won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. After many years of protests, political and social action campaigns that championed human rights, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shockingly assassinated in 1968 at the early age of 39 in Memphis, Tennessee. He was on a trip to support black workers who were on strike for unequal pay. His legacy of promoting civil rights and the movement the Southern Leadership Conference inspired helped usher in new legislation that is more inclusive for Americans of all backgrounds. Martin Luther King Jr. is remembered for his belief in social justice, his insistence on nonviolent protest, his vision for discrimination-free society, and his belief in the inherent harmony possible in all of humanity. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Martin Luther King Jr. Now it's your turn. No need to wait a single moment. Simply use the Schoology portal. We've left a space for you to journal your thoughts. Here are a few questions to help get you started. What are some of the ways in which Martin Luther King Jr.'s life has affected your own life? Do you believe that there's still work to be done regarding civil rights? If so, who are the people who are being discriminated against today? And what can be done to change that? What is your human rights dream for the future? Take your time. Remember, this is your journal, your diary. You can be honest with your thoughts. Just as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. teaches us, never forget how we can positively change the world when we are all equal in dignity and rights.
And I've seen the promised land.